All right, welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely. Always up for a good exploration.
Awesome. Well, today, we're going to tackle a classic Zen Buddhist story.
Oh, intriguing. Which one?
It's called The Empty Cup. I actually have, let me see right here, a transcribed excerpt from a video retelling the story. We're going to try to unpack its deeper meaning, especially when it comes to, well, learning, personal growth, and maybe even touch on wisdom a little.
Sounds fascinating. I think our listeners who are, dedicated to lifelong learning will find some pretty interesting parallels to their own experiences here.
You think so?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a story that's resonated with people for centuries, because it really speaks to something so fundamental about being human,
What do you mean?
that desire to learn and grow, right? But also that tendency we all have to get stuck in our own ways.
I see, yeah. And that's where our main character, Koji, comes in, right? He's
Exactly.
on this quest for Zen enlightenment.
A classic journey.
And he's pretty confident about his understanding of it. He's read all the books, practiced meditation. But as we're going to see, there's a big difference between, like, book knowledge and true wisdom.
It's that difference between intellectual understanding and actual experience.
Right.
Reminds me of the whole Zen concept of beginner's mind.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
The idea that approaching things with like an open, curious attitude, free from those preconceptions, is essential for true learning. Like you have to be a beginner to truly learn.
Hmm. So Koji sets out to find this renowned Zen master named Takashi, who, of course, lives in a remote mountain temple.
Of course, tucked away.
You can almost picture it, can't you?
Totally.
Lush forests, a babbling brook, a simple room where Koji's waiting. Serene, peaceful.
Setting the stage, creating a sense of serenity.
But peaceful as it sounds, I bet inside Koji's, well, brimming with anticipation.
Oh, absolutely. And probably a little bit of nervous energy too, like what's he about to encounter?
Yeah, good point. Because when Master Takashi finally enters, there's this intense silence as he just kind of scrutinizes Koji.
Oh, I bet that's intimidating. Just observing, taking him in.
And then instead of, launching into a lecture on Zen or something, he simply asks, "What do you know about Zen enlightenment?"
Straight to the point.
It's like he wants to assess Koji's understanding, before even starting to teach him anything.
It's a classic teaching technique in those traditions.
Oh, how so?
By asking that question, Takashi's encouraging Koji to, well, articulate his understanding and maybe in doing so realize its limitations.
Interesting. So what does Koji say?
Well, Koji, without missing a beat, starts explaining Zen enlightenment as, a state of awareness, clarity, transcending dualistic thinking.
He's got the lingo down, huh?
He's using all the right words, definitely. But I'm sensing, something's missing. Like there's no real depth to it.
Yeah, you're right. What do you mean, though?
It's like a textbook definition, all head knowledge, no heart.
Can you explain what Koji means by dualistic thinking? Some of our listeners might not be familiar with that term.
Sure, yeah. So dualistic thinking basically means seeing the world in terms of opposites. Good and bad, right and wrong, self and other. And in Zen, the idea is to move beyond those dualities and see the interconnectedness of everything.
Oh, I see. So Koji's laying all this out for Master Takashi, but I'm guessing Takashi can see right through him, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's been doing this for a while. And that's
Okay.
why he asks Koji the pivotal question, the one that really gets to the heart of the matter.
Which is?
How do you know all that? It's a challenge, you see, that forces Koji to confront the source of his knowledge and ultimately the limits of his understanding.
I bet that question just threw Koji for a loop.
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, he tries to defend his knowledge, claims he's making progress in controlling his thoughts, his emotions, but you can just sense that he's struggling,
Struggling with what?
trying to reconcile his like intellectual understanding of Zen with his actual lived experience.
He doesn't actually know, does he?
Yeah, it's like he's trying to convince himself as much as Takashi, like, look how much I know. But deep down, he probably senses something's not quite right.
Interesting.
Mm.
So what does Takashi do?
Well, Takashi, in classic Zen master fashion, delivers this incredibly powerful statement, a real truth bomb.
Lay it on me.
He says, "You don't have enlightenment. You have just a cup full of opinions and knowledge, but no space for real understanding and wisdom. You think you know everything already, but in fact, you know nothing."
Whoa. Talk about a reality check. And he doesn't sugarcoat it at all. Seems a bit harsh, but I guess in a way it's also kind of compassionate.
Right.
Like he's trying to wake Koji up to the fact that his cup is already full, so there's no room for anything new.
Exactly. It's a classic Zen teaching technique. using like a direct, sometimes shocking statement to break through the student's intellectual barriers and create an opening for, well, for true learning to begin.
I can see how that would resonate, even for those of us who aren't, Zen Buddhists. I think we've all felt like our cup is overflowing sometimes. What about you? Ever feel that way?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've all been in those situations where we're so attached to our own opinions or beliefs that we just can't see things from a different perspective.
We get stuck.
Right. And that's when we need to remember that whole idea of emptying our cups.
So how does Takashi illustrate this idea?
Well, after dropping that truth bomb, Takashi shifts gears a bit. Instead of, like, continuing the verbal sparring, he offers Koji a cup of special tea.
Nice. So they're going to share some tea now.
Yeah. You can imagine the scene, right? The aroma filling the room, the steam rising. It's almost like a palate cleanser, you know?
Okay, yeah.
Transitioning to the next stage of the lesson, moving from words to action, from the abstract to a concrete experience.
So what happens?
Well, as Koji sips his tea, Takashi keeps pouring, you see, even as the cup starts to overflow. I can only imagine Koji's growing discomfort as the tea just spills everywhere.
Oh, no. So what does he do?
Well, he does what any of us would probably do in that situation.
Which is?
He can't take it anymore. He shouts at Takashi to stop, and that's the breakthrough moment right there.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's not a deep philosophical discussion or a sudden flash of insight.
Right. Sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected places.
Okay, so what happens next? What does Takashi say?
Well, he takes the opportunity to explain that the cup, it symbolizes Koji's mind. When it's so full of opinions and knowledge, there's simply no space for new insights or experiences.
I can see how that would resonate with someone like Koji, who's spent so much time studying and trying to grasp all these complex concepts.
Right.
It's almost like he was so focused on filling his cup that he forgot why he even had a cup in the first place.
And that's the power of this whole emptying your cup metaphor. It's not about forgetting everything you know or becoming like a blank slate. It's about creating space within yourself to be receptive to new ideas, new perspectives, new experiences.
I like that. It's not about emptying your mind. It's about making space.
Exactly.
So do we pick up with Koji's reaction next time?
We do. We'll delve into how he takes this lesson and what it means for all of us on our own learning journeys.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
So we left off with Koji having this, well, kind of messy realization, right?
Yeah, the overflowing cup. Pretty vivid image.
It is, and it really gets at the heart of the story's message,
Yeah.
That in order to truly learn and grow, we sometimes have to let go of what we think we know, make space for something new.
Okay, so how does Koji react to this whole tea ceremony?
Well, the story tells us he has this, a moment of realization. He kind of sees his own arrogance, and starts to embrace, well, humility and openness. Becomes Takashi's devoted student.
So it's not like an instant transformation.
No, not really. More like the beginning of a journey, right? I mean, for someone like Koji, letting go of all that knowledge he'd built up, it must have been a real challenge.
It's like taking a step back to move forward, in a way.
Yeah, exactly. But I bet it was incredibly liberating, too.
How so?
Think about the freedom that comes with letting go of all those preconceived notions. Just being open to whatever comes next,
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's the beauty of this whole empty cup metaphor. It's not about achieving some static state of emptiness. It's about cultivating a dynamic state of receptivity,
Yeah.
Always being willing to learn and grow.
It's like a cup that's constantly being emptied and refilled, a continuous cycle.
Exactly. Always learning, always unlearning. And I think this idea really resonates with our listeners, who are constantly seeking new knowledge and expanding their understanding of the world.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's about recognizing that learning's a lifelong journey. And it requires us to be, constantly emptying those cups, making space for new information, perspectives, experiences, the whole thing.
We talk a lot about aha moments on the show, those times when something just clicks and you see things in a whole new way.
Yeah, those are great. But they can only happen when we create space for them, right?
So it's not just about filling our minds with information. It's about knowing when to let go, too.
Exactly. Sometimes the most important thing we can learn is what we don't know.
What we need to unlearn.
Right. To make room for something new.
So how do we actually do that? How do we go about emptying our cups?
Well, it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing practice, right?
Yeah.
Cultivating awareness of our biases, our assumptions, our tendencies to cling to what we think we know.
Sounds tough.
It can be. It's about being willing to step outside our comfort zones, challenge our own beliefs, really engage with people and ideas that are different from our own.
Takes courage.
Definitely does. And humility, too. That willingness to admit we don't have all the answers. But the rewards, they're immense. When we empty our cups, we open ourselves up to a whole world of possibilities.
Okay, so Koji eventually masters the Zen teachings, right? Passes on the empty cup story to his own students. Nice little cycle there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image. But before we get too caught up in the happy ending, I think it's important to bring it back to our own lives.
No, so.
Because this story, it's not just some nice tale from a faraway land. It's a reflection of our own journeys as learners, right? It's a reminder that true learning requires us to let go of our attachment to what we think we know and embrace the unknown with curiosity, with humility.
It's the journey, not just the destination.
Right. And sometimes the most important part of that journey is recognizing when our cups are full and knowing when it's time to empty them so we can continue learning and growing.
I like that. So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into the empty cup, what stands out to you most about this story? What resonates with your own experiences as a learner?
For me, it's that idea, of knowledge as a flowing river, not a stagnant pool. We need to be open to that constant influx, new ideas, new perspectives coming in. Yeah, that's powerful. And it makes you realize, how easy it is to get comfortable, with what we already know. We build up our expertise or opinions, and it feels, well, safe, familiar. But that's also where things can get,
Scale.
Yeah, exactly. Like clinging to the shore instead of, diving into the current. We were talking about Koji's cup overflowing, but maybe for some of us, it's more like our mental shelves are getting dusty.
Oh, I like that.
Right. And I think the learner, our audience, they're really attuned to this. They crave those aha moments, those
Yeah.
shifts in perspective that really shake things up. But those moments just can't happen if we're not willing to let go of something first.
Makes sense.
Mm.
It also makes me think about all the different ways we learn, too. Some of us love to, dive deep into a single topic, become an expert. Others, they thrive on variety, connecting ideas from different fields.
Right. But even with those different approaches, that underlying principle, emptying the cup, it seems essential, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It's not just about the amount of knowledge we have. It's about how we hold it. Are we clinging to it as a source of identity? Or are we open to revising it, refining it, even discarding it if something better comes along?
That's a pretty radical idea.
It is. It goes against that natural tendency to want to be right, to defend our viewpoints.
Totally. So how do we get past that?
Well, what if we just reframe being wrong as an opportunity to learn something new?
Okay.
Every time we encounter information that challenges our existing beliefs, we could see it as a chance to expand our understanding.
So instead of getting defensive, we get curious.
Exactly. It's a real shift in mindset, and it's a shift that's, I think, becoming increasingly important these days.
How so?
Well, think about it. We're constantly bombarded with information, right? Coming from all sides. If we're not careful, our cups can overflow so quickly, and then we're left feeling overwhelmed, confused.
That's the opposite of what the learner wants, right?
Exactly. They come to this show, to this deep dive, looking for insights, for clarity, not just more noise.
Good point.
So maybe the biggest takeaway from this whole empty cup story, it's not just about Zen Buddhism. It's about developing a healthy relationship with information itself, being selective, being discerning, and most importantly, being willing to let go, of what's no longer serving us.
Makes sense. We've talked a lot about, what it means to empty your cup. But before we wrap things up, what do you think about refilling it? What kind of knowledge experiences are most nourishing, you think?
That's a good question. And honestly, I think it's different for everyone. But for me personally, it's about seeking out sources of information that are, well, first of all, they got to be credible, right? But also thought-provoking, something that challenges my assumptions, expands my understanding, maybe even inspires me to take action in the world.
Yeah. It's not just about passively absorbing information. It's about actively engaging with it, letting it shape our thoughts, our actions.
Exactly. And recognizing that learning, well, it's not a solitary pursuit, right?
True.
It's about connecting with others, sharing ideas, learning from each other's experiences, the whole thing.
Yeah, well said. This deep dive wouldn't be the same without you here to, offer your insights and expertise.
Oh, thanks. Always a pleasure to be here, and to learn from you as well.
Well, we hope everyone listening learned something too. We've explored this story of the empty cup, we delved into its deeper meanings, and I think we've connected it back to well, the challenges and the opportunities of being a lifelong learner, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. But of course, the conversation doesn't end here. We want to leave you with something to ponder, something to think about.
Okay, what is it?
What cups might you need to empty in your own life to make room for, well, for greater learning, greater growth? What are you holding on to that might be preventing you from seeing things, well, seeing things in a new light?
Ooh, those are some great questions. Definitely something to think about. So until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those cups empty and ready for, well, for new and exciting discoveries.